Okay, everyone. So hopefully you've managed to take him on board the important concepts for the first of these presentations. What I want to build on now is some other important concepts in topic one. Here, we're going to introduce the idea of a production possibility boundary. Okay, now for this, I'm going to have to create a fictitious country. What I want you to imagine is that we have a country that can produce a combination of two different goods and services. Just imagine we've got a country that can combine its factors of production to produce either consumer goods or capital goods. Okay, a consumer good is something that me and you will buy, a computer, a pen, a bag, for example. A capital good, well, think about your factors of production, is a man-made aid of production, something that you use to produce goods and services when you work in a business. Now let's imagine that this country, if it uses all of its resources efficiently, can achieve this production possibility boundary. I'm going to label this point 0, and I'll just call this point CO1 and this point CA2. So what this line shows is the maximum number of goods and services which can be produced in this country, assuming an efficient use of resources. It's the best that can be achieved in the country. Anywhere on this line, we're maximising economic welfare. We cannot get any better off than this. Okay. Now, what I want to bring in now is the concept of inefficiency in a country. I'm going to draw on our production possibility point boundary examples of this. This cross here is an example of inefficiency. In fact, anywhere within this triangle represents inefficiency. Let me take this example here. If we operate here, clearly we're not producing as many consumer goods or capital goods as we could do. This is an example of inefficiency in the economy, and this occurs when we have some factors of production which are being underutilized. So for example, we know we have 4 factors of production: land, labour, capital and enterprise. If we have some labour who are unemployed, for example, they're not producing goods and services. They could do, so that means we have inefficiency. We're not producing to our full capability. If we have a factory producing a number of goods and services, if that factory is not producing to its potential, again, then we have inefficiency within the economy. Okay. Now, what I want to do now is to use our production possibility boundary diagram to explain the concept of opportunity cost. So remember, we have scarce resources. So let's imagine that this economy decides to produce CO1 consumer goods. When they operate at CO1, they can produce 0 capital goods. Let's label that point A. If this country now decides they want to make more capital goods, and they decide to move to point B. Let's label point B CO2 and CA2. So what we can see here is, as we go from CO1 to CO2 and from 0 to CA2, we're now producing more capital goods at the expense of consumer goods. So in this case, our opportunity cost is, as we go from 0 capital goods to CA2 capital goods, we lose CO1 to CO2 consumer goods. Let's imagine the economy now decides to move to point C. So at point C, we're now producing CA2 capital goods and 0 consumer goods. So as we gain capital goods from here to here, we lose CO2 to 0 consumer goods. Clearly, if we go back from C to A, we lose CA2 to 0 capital goods, but we gain 0 to CO1 consumer goods. And that is the basic theory behind a production possibility boundary. Now, before we start thinking about what can affect where this curve lies, let's bring in two more important concepts. I want to now bring in the idea of allocative and productive efficiency. Now, in effect, both these two types of efficiency occur on the production possibility boundary. So A, B and C, and anywhere on that blue line indicate allocative and productive efficiency. Now, allocative efficiency basically means that it's impossible to make somebody better off without making somebody else worse off. Let's assume we're at point B on our production possibility boundary. If we're at point B and we decide to move to point C, we make those people happy that want to consume more capital goods, but that will be at the expense of people that want to consume consumer goods, because we can now produce less of those. Clearly, if we went from B to A, we produce more consumer goods, some people will be happy. We produce less capital goods, those people will be unhappy. Productive efficiency. What we mean by this is that all of our factors of production are being used in the most efficient way possible. So in other words, we are producing at lowest average total cost. We cannot get any more efficient than that. And again, that occurs on the blue production possibility boundary diagram line. If I just go back to my X very quickly, we know that this is inefficiency. It's inefficient allocatively because if we were to move from X to the line, clearly we're making more consumer goods and more capital goods. This means we can still make both people happy, i.e. consumer good people and capital good people happy. The X also represents productive inefficiency because we are not using all of our resources in the most efficient way possible. We could get better. Clearly, the closer we get to the blue production possibility boundary line, the more economic welfare we have. Okay, and that is the end of this topic. What I want to move on to the next topic is what makes a production possibility boundary diagram shift.